America loses girls in math and finance as early as age 7. And that's not because girls are not good at it. It's truly heartbreaking to find out the reasons why girls lose interest in STEM careers, basic math and finance so early on. So if you have a daughter, if you have a friend who has a daughter, if you have family who have daughters, please watch this video till the end and share it with all of your friends and family who have daughters. My guest today is Maura Cunningham. She's the founder and CEO of the nonprofit organization Rock the Street, Wall Street, which is a financial investment literacy program designed to spark high school girls' interest in pursuing finance careers. She spent 25 plus years in the financial industry as one of the few women in the room, and that's why she was eager to turn her attention to getting more girls interested in their financial independence and exploring jobs in finance. In this episode of the Invest Diva Movement, we compare the differences between the Iranian and the American culture when it comes to math and finance, and why 60% of my classmates in computer science class in Iran were girls, while in Western societies like in Japan and in the US, I have been the only girl in the room. So we get really deep down to the reasons why this is happening in the US, and most importantly, how we can put a stop to this disability that haunts our daughters throughout their lives in so many years, not just their careers. We are going to hear in the intro, and while we do that, please head over to the comment section and tell me, when did you have the money talk with your daughter? We're going to cue in the intro, and let's go. Welcome, Maura. I'm super excited to have you here on the Invest Diva Movement. I've been getting your Rock the Street, Wall Street emails for I don't know even how long, and I was always curious, like, what is like? I knew it has something to do with women and finance, and then I had my team like, can you please just reach out and say, it feels like she has the same mission as I do, and if she does, we have to get her on. And it turns out that you absolutely do. And we were just chit-chatting a little bit before the interview right now, and we have some things, like we have some shared interest in the background. But what brings us today here, and you were telling me, how do we lose women or girls in America to math early on? And that is super curious for me as well. First of all, I wanted to welcome you. Thank you for joining us.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
And so Maura, I just wanted to get into it because I grew up in Iran and I studied electrical engineering in Japan. And the funny thing is, I actually consider myself sucking at math. I'm not that good at math. And when I'm talking about math, I'm not good at, like, obviously electrical engineering math. But that didn't really stop me from studying electrical engineering when I was in Iran. I'm super curious to see, how is America different than Iran? Because in Iran, I did 6 months of electrical engineering, of computer science in college in Iran before I went to Japan. And 60% of my classmates were girls. But when I went to Japan, I was the only girl in my class for the whole 6 years. It was such a shock to me. And then I came to America. I thought, from the movies in Hollywood, I had a different picture from America. I thought America is a land of equality. And I thought, well, like, women have so much power here. I came here, I went on Wall Street. And again, I was the only girl in the team. And I'm like, what is happening over here? So and I've never gone to school here. I have a 2-year-old now, and I want to know what to expect. Like, what is it? Why are girls not into math or finance or any of these STEM careers, for that matter, in your opinion?
Well, thank you again for allowing me to visit with you today on this really important subject. And you've had quite an experience, from what you've told me, with regard to the different cultures, kind of like night and day, particularly where women are concerned. So I'm happy to elaborate on that. But let me start off with telling you with what Rock the Street, Wall Street is about. So Rock the Street, Wall Street is a financial literacy program designed to spark the interest of high school girls into careers of finance. So we have two missions. So the first mission is financial literacy. And the reason for that is because 2 out of 3 women state that they know little to nothing about finance nor financial products. So that is almost 70% of American women state that they know little to nothing. The second mission is to get more of us into the industry. As you already said yourself there, you were the only woman on the team. Likewise, I was always the only producing female in my office. And also on my team. So, fast forward, that was true 30 plus years ago, and fast forward to your generation, obviously it's still true. So my thinking is that a lot of this has to do with what's called math anxiety that girls have in our society. And so, and it is uniquely an American and Western European problem. As I mentioned before we started taping this particular interview, we lose girls in math as early as age 9, and in some studies earlier than that. So it starts very early. So if you wanted to follow the life of a girl in the United States in math, it would look something like this. She has a set of parents, female, obviously. Well, she has a set of parents, and in a typical family setting, they would have a male and a female, mom and dad. And if mom and dad have stereotypical roles, then it is highly likely that they will impose stereotypical roles on their children as well. So that starts very early, even through pre-K. They're going to be giving the girl more pink and the boy, of course, more blue, and those kinds of things. And they're going to be setting her up for more nurturing things and him for more, let's say, science and math pursuits. So then the student or the child gets to kindergarten and into what we call elementary school. And over 90% of the teachers in the United States are female. So of the 90% female elementary school teachers, very few, if any of them, have any certification in math whatsoever. So this is not a knock on teachers. I happen to be married to a former middle school director. I have many teachers in my family, but the reality here in the United States is that very, very few of the elementary school teachers, of which 90% are women, have any certification in math. As a result, when the teacher goes to what we call the whiteboard, blackboard, or smartboard, the teacher has what's called math anxiety. And that math anxiety carries to the girls in the classroom, but not the boys in the classroom. And the University of Chicago has 12-year longitudinal studies on this, and they've sliced and diced it each and every way. And so when the girls see this, they begin to think that it's optimally acceptable, that it's societally acceptable for them to opt out of math. You will even hear the teachers sometimes say, I hate math, I don't like math. And so it just continues this pervasive stereotyping that girls can't do math, quote unquote. And so they then go into middle school, and then at middle school, they are hearing it among each other. So the girls are telling each other, well, girls can't do math, and so we don't have to do math, and that kind of thing. So it again becomes pervasive in the culture that the girls think that they can't do math, or that they're not expected to do math. And then you get to high school, and in high school, we've actually heard comments in some of our some of our classrooms. We have heard the girls say, well, our boyfriends or our husbands will handle the finances. I mean, so that's where it goes. And so as a result of this math phobia and math anxiety, all the way starting from when they are very, very young to high school, and then again into college, the girls have already opted out of finance and economics because, first of all, I think that we don't necessarily belong there and that they don't see us. So with regard to STEM professions, science, technology, engineering, and math, of which we are the M in math, the number one reason why they don't choose STEM studies nor professions is they don't see women in those professions. In popular culture, you will hardly ever see a woman in finance. Or any of the STEM professions for that matter. And then the number two reason why they're not choosing STEM professions is because they don't see their girlfriends choosing those professions, nor studies. So with Rock the Street, Wall Street, we're overcoming that in that we have cohorts of girls in each of our schools, of which we will be in 34 high schools this coming fall across about 18 US cities. We have, number one, they will see women in the profession. Because 100% of our instructors are female financial professionals. And number two, they will see their own friends beginning to study and like finance and economics and choosing those majors and minors as they go to college. So we're overcoming those two obstacles as to why they're not going into the profession. So that should give you some idea, Kiana, of the life of a girl in the United States with regard to math.
That is so fascinating. And now I kind of am understanding why. And actually, I do have a question for you before I kind of explain how it is in Iran.
Yeah.
But what level of math are we talking about? Like people, when women say, I can't do math, are we talking about like 2 + 2 is 4? Or are we talking about like integral and like differential? Like what level of math are we talking about? Because I actually don't know what is taught in American high schools.
So here's what we're doing in the United States in our classes. We are lifting the veil, as it were, on the fact that finance isn't anything more than first-year algebra.
Exactly. Like that's what I tell them. Like, guys, like this is like we can literally pull out your smartphone and do it. It's like not. I don't understand what the big deal is. Like, I go to women. I'm like, hey, like let's invest. Oh no. I'm not a math whiz. I'm like, what math? Like what math?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's just this societal issue. Again, it's Western European countries and America. You don't have this problem in China, Russia, nor Eastern European countries easily enough, and apparently in Iran. So I would love to hear your side of how you grew up in Iran on this.
Yeah, so basically what it is, and by the way, saying that Russia and China are ahead of us is kind of, it's alarming because we are under attack basically on so many levels. But yeah, so basically when it comes to Iran, I always heard that even when I was in Iran, that the level of math taught at schools in Iran is much more advanced than that of the US. I always heard that because we, obviously after the revolution, a lot of people migrated from Iran to America. All of my family were in America, and people my age who went to America and came here, like let's say at 9th grade or whatever, they were way ahead from their peers in the US and in the school. One other thing maybe is because, I don't know, so I kind of, when you were saying, yeah, girls don't see their peers going to math kind of is sexy, I think, in Iran. Like,
Really?
it is. Like, it kind of is. Oh, like, and also, so another thing is that the high school, all the schools are gender separated. So
Yeah.
boys schools, girls schools. Like, I did not grow up with guys in my class to begin with. And our math teachers were women. In boys schools, the math teachers were men. It's like completely segregated. And therefore, like for me to be, and I was very competitive always, even though I'm not, again, my best superpower is not math, but because I was competitive, I always tried to be the top of the class, even at math. So I would just like cram and like drive myself crazy in order to be top of the class, even when it came to math, which really, really I struggle with. But again, the level of math that I'm talking about, we're talking about like, you know, integral, differential, like things that people apparently learn here in college.
That's true. Yeah.
And the matter of the fact that what gets people in women in America so intimidated by the math, and I'm not trying to put people down, it really isn't. It's just that I understand how if you have a block in your mind that, oh my God, this is not for me, it's that much harder to actually get into it and tackle it. If you already have this mindset that, oh, this is not going to work out for me because math is not for me, even without knowing how easy it may or may not be.
Right.
So I think these are some of the factors. Maybe having boys, girls schools separated had to do with it, and the fact that we did have female role models as our teachers, and engineering and math is considered sexy. So it's interesting because you know how doctor is a status in America, like doctor something. Engineer is a status in Iran. So my dad is an engineer, so it's engineer Danial. I'm engineer Danial. So it's a status.
Interesting.
So I think it has a lot to do with all of these things that people consider cool, as opposed to anything to do with how hard math is. And as a matter of fact, I actually just checked her up on Google as you were talking about. You know, women are statistically, actually, a lot of women are better than their male peers in math. So one Iranian woman, she was the youngest Iranian math genius, and I believe she passed away in 2017. Maryam Mirzakhani. She is the first female to ever get the Fields Medals, Blue Menth. I don't know. There are these awards for math that I can't even pronounce. And she got it. And she's a woman, and she was Iranian. And of course, I feel like if she had grown up in America, she probably would not have gone down this path, and she would not have become the first female. But in Iran, because girls just go through down that path, they just become successful. It's not that Iranians are smarter. I know we're not. We have so many brilliant women in America, but they just have this mental...
Cultural. It's a cultural block, totally a cultural block. And again, it really does start very, very early. One of the things I focus on the teenage girls, and the reason even though we may lose some of them at age 9, we rekindle their interest in math by announcing in the classroom, or asking them in the classroom, can you do first year algebra? And they'll say, oh yeah, we got that. And so we're like, okay, well then you can have a brilliant career in finance, and oh, by the way, you can manage your own portfolio, and you can be the you can have reign dominion over your own finances. And so it's a complete revelation to them that it's only first year algebra, because their impression of Wall Street, again and again and again, what we hear, because we poll our students all the time, is it's men yelling. Because
it's true.
They see the trading floor, right? But that's all they've seen.
Yeah, that's all.
They don't understand that we do much more than that. There is some truth to that, although the trading pits are from yesterday now, and they're just for show, really. But what they don't see, and this is a huge disconnect in the industry, in terms of recruiting women. I'll give you a perfect example. I was sitting having dinner at Middle Tennessee State University, which is in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I'm seated next to a gentleman who is the head of Eastern religions for the university, and he comes from Tibet. And his daughter went to the University of Chicago, which is considered one of the most math prestigious schools in the United States. And so he, as the head of Eastern religions, and he's a Buddhist, by the way, I asked about what he did, and then he asked about mine, what I was doing. And so I mentioned, of course, Rock the Street. And he said, well, I want to tell you about my daughter. He said, she's studying and is up there at the University of Chicago. And she's majoring in finance, and all of Wall Street is courting her to come to Wall Street. And he said, however, the only thing that they keep talking about is how much money she's going to make. Not that there's anything wrong with that, okay? But it's the only thing they kept throwing at her. If instead, number one, she's a Buddhist. Okay, you have to appeal to some higher motivations than just the money. Okay, and so if they had said to her, you can change the face of a city by going into city finances. You can change the state of the federal government by working in some treasure function at the Treasury. And if they had appealed to her on a higher moral value rather than just the money, they might have gotten her. But instead what happened is she said, I'm out. if this is what Wall Street is about, in that they just keep telling me how much money I'm going to make and why I need to come to their firm versus what my, what I can give back, I'm out. So she stayed in academia at the University of Chicago. That's just one story of many, many stories that I've heard in terms of women getting turned off to Wall Street, which is the other end of this. My thesis on this, with regard to why there are fewer women, in addition to the math phobia and math anxiety that we have in the society, it's also a function of how Wall Street recruits to women. I think there's a huge disconnect in how they recruit to them. What we are telling the girls, our students, is we help people, number one, pay for a mortgage, a house, save for their children's college education, save for their own retirement, create dreams for them, and we help them build the budgets for those dreams. And so they don't know that when we meet them. They have absolutely no clue of that. They, again, just think it's this, men yelling routine. And so we say, no, there's so many elements to finance on Wall Street, whether it's a portfolio manager, whether it's a treasurer in a corporate treasury position, which, by the way, we are all about finance. It doesn't have to necessarily be Wall Street. I put Wall Street in the name because the research also shows that no one is speaking to the girls about investing. Your typical daughter in the United States, if you have a daughter or a son, you will find that the father will speak to the son about finances. You will find, too, that no one, neither father nor mother, are speaking to their daughters about finances. And I said, this has to end. This has got to end. We've got to get into more of an investment headset with these kids and let them know that they can do this, show them how to invest. And so, again, as I said earlier, we're lifting the veil on the fact that it's nothing more than first-year algebra with regard to the math itself. And then investing is very, there's an approach you can take, an analysis you can make. And, it's a function of what you see around you, too. You see Amazon all the time. You see FedEx planes all the time. You see Clorox being bought now during the pandemic. And, all those kinds of things. In fact, the stocks we're studying include some of the ones I've mentioned because of the pandemic. And we're going to be studying the effect of the pandemic on the stock markets and also the particular stocks.
Yeah, so that's what I tell my students too. Investing is more about understanding psychology and market psychology than math. It's like, what's happening right now? How can if you're good at shopping, I tell my students, you're going to be good at investing because you're going to look for cheap stuff. You're going to go for sales, right?
Exactly.
This is absolutely brilliant. And it's just giving me so much rage over, like hearing the things that you were just telling me, like, oh man, I cannot believe this is still happening in 2020 United States.
I know. And, here's further evidence of this. When I went to college, we won't say how many years ago, over 25 years ago, over 25. And I was the only girl in my math class, my business math class, the only one. There were 35 guys and me. So fast forward to one of my staff members, Ashley Leftwich. Ashley went to the University of Georgia. And she was a good math student at her high school here in Nashville, Tennessee. And so she gets to the University of Georgia, where there are 40,000 students, 40,000 students. She is the only female in her calculus class out of 40 and 40 men in her class, 40 men in her. So that's a whole generation that's passed. And we're still have this problem. And it's like the silent killer in the United States that no one is speaking about.
It turned me off, to be honest with you. And I'm sorry that it brings back memory that when I went to Japan and I was the only girl in my class, it was like, it suddenly, all of a sudden became intimidating. I'm like, what am I doing here?
Right.
Right.
So what did you do? So how did you handle that?
I quit engineering.
Oh, no.
I did. I mean, there's a combination. So I honestly don't know if I would have quit. Now that I listened to you, I always thought that there was a combination of things. Engineering class, I was the only girl, and the classes were taught in Japanese. So I was learning Japanese and engineering at the same time. So it was double the blow. Yeah. But then I got to 2008, I actually randomly shorted the dollar-yen pair. I didn't even know what I was doing. And I made $10,000. I'm like, oh my God, this is so awesome. So I got into that.
Good for you. Good for you.
So I got to the finance side of things. And again, when I went to Wall Street, it became just so political that I quit Wall Street too. And I started Invest Diva because, for me, it happened very fast. And I wanted to hear your story. Like, why did you choose math? Like, out of all people, because it is for you. For me, it was just like, yeah, my dad is an engineer. I'm going to become an engineer. It was kind of like everybody else was becoming engineers, so I was going to become an engineer. For you, it must have just taken a lot of consideration. And why did you choose your path?
I didn't study math. I studied economics. So let me make that clear. So I was a news hound. I loved the news growing up in New York City. And I was absolutely fascinated. There used to be a show on called Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser. And I found it absolutely fascinating. I loved politics and I loved the news. And so on Wall Street Week, Louis Rukeyser would have these guests that would come in from all over the country, mostly Wall Streeters though, who would talk about economic policy, political policy, social policy. And it was the key to the mysteries for me. It was absolutely the key to the mysteries that, oh, that's how it's connected. That's how money flows. And that's how you change policies. And that's how you change culture. And that's how you change societies, by funding initiatives and, or innovation, if it's in the private sector. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the key to the mysteries, economics and finance. And so I thought, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. They could talk and talk ad nauseum about any topic. I mean, it was phenomenal that they could keep talking, the depth and breadth of everything that they could talk about these issues, not only here in the United States, but globally, of how things were happening, whether it's a revolution or it's the FOMC, or it's state taxes, income taxes, or school board issues, or our innovation, and as I said, in the private sector, or what was happening in the oil stocks at the time, which was the big thing back then. And so I just thought, they're so informed. They have a deep knowledge and a vast knowledge of things. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And so I did. So I found economics and loved it, and then went right to Wall Street. And there again, I was pumped every day, walking into the office and ultimately onto the trading floor. And I loved it. I mean, I will say I was always typically the only producing female. There were certainly, the support staff was female. It was still like, the Mad Men TV show. It was just very exciting. I always loved it, and then of course, knowing what I could do for families, ultimately I worked, I did trading, of course, and that was fascinating. And then I worked with families where we helped to have a huge impact on multi-generational planning.
So what did you learn from your time on Wall Street that actually influenced your decision to found Rock the Street Wall Street?
So I started Rock the Street Wall Street. I was fortunate enough to retire in 2009. And then I started to trade my own account. I trade options. I still trade options. But 3 years after doing that, I thought there had to be more to life than this. So I said, okay, I've got to do something other than this. So I went back to school and I got my master's thesis in civic leadership, and my master's in civic leadership. My thesis was on girls in math and how we lose them at age 9 in the United States. And so I always knew that I wanted to bring more women to Wall Street, simply because, quite frankly, it was a little lonesome. Being always the one and only, and then going to conferences where, there'd be 800 men at the conference, and maybe, if you're lucky, maybe 20 women. And it was always the same 20 women. And I do think I would have had even more fun. I had a lot of fun, but even more fun and just being collegial with more women. it gets tiring to be the only woman only woman all the time. And so I was fortunate enough that I did grow up with 3 older brothers, so it was never intimidating to me. I had very sharp elbows, which you had to have on Wall Street for sure, and I think you still do today. But I think though, so I wanted to start something where, I had very dear friends who are, very bright women, professionals all, who absolutely just will not really give enough time to learn finance. And will just say, I just don't do math, or I can't handle my finances. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so bright. You can do this. But they just give up to it because that's the culture. And so I said, I got to do something about this. So I knew in working with my clients that I needed to reach them at a much younger age to stop that mentality, right? To stop that mentality and catch it right there at the moment that they are deciding, number one, if they're going to go to college, and number two, what they're going to major or minor in. Because again, our girls, our students have absolutely no idea about the profession whatsoever. And so we are opening that door to them in a big, big way.
That's so amazing. And it's actually, let me ask you this, because I'm targeting the moms. I'm targeting the moms and showing them how they can take control of their financial future. Because my thing is, women, again, the things that you said, I've seen that women say, hey, my husband is going to handle my finances. Guess what? The average age of widowhood in the US is 59, 50, 60. It's something like that.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And well, women live longer. And then when the husband dies, and guess even Kobe Bryant, he just died. And his wife, I actually don't know. I know that they have a lot of financial advisors. Do they have her best interest? How involved was she in the process of their finances? Like imagine being mourning and having to suddenly being thrown at all these pile of finances. So that is my thing, how to take control of your financial future so that you don't have to depend on your husbands. But of course, having a 2-year-old daughter myself, I'm scared that she may fall into the American tradition. I'm hoping not, because my husband is an engineer. I am doing this, but I don't know what school is going to do to her, right? So what exactly do you go to all high schools? Do you have a curriculum there? How exactly does it work? Like, do you work with, which high schools do you work with?
So 100% of our schools are public schools, and they're co-ed public schools. And so the program, there are 3 components to the program. It's a year-long program, by the way. So we're not a one and done. Very often you'll find that corporate CSR, corporate social responsibility programs, will often roll out the red carpet for an evening event, and then they roll it back up, and then they're done. They've spent $40,000 on one event that's client facing, saying that they've done something for diversity and inclusion, and that's it. And a lot of the women are fed up with that. And that's why they're very pleased with our program, and that it's a year-long program. And we have cohorts of girls, which I'll talk about later. But so there's 3 components to the year-long program. The first 2 happen in the fall, and the third happens in the spring. So the first component is a series of 5 classroom sessions that are led by 100% female financial professionals. Okay, we insist on that simply because more often than not, financial literacy in the United States is often taught by the football coach or the drama teacher or the substitute teacher, who have little to no knowledge about finance. And in fact, over 80% of the teachers self-report, I'm going to say that again, over 80% self-report that they do not feel competent enough to teach financial literacy. So imagine that. Imagine if you have 80% of the teachers going into a classroom to teach history, but say they feel no competency in teaching history or English for that matter. So here it is, you have over 80% of the United States teachers self-reporting that they do not feel competent enough to teach financial literacy. This is part of the problem we have in the society. And so if that's the case, we've got to change something about that. And so that's the plea that we're making to corporate America, particularly at the investment firms who are our sponsors. And we say, look, this isn't going to change on its own. There has to be an intervention. And so we have armies of women, thankfully, through our corporate sponsors who go into these classrooms now. And we're plug and play, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be in 18 cities this coming fall. So we have the 5 classroom sessions. And so and these are all hands-on financial projects, by the way, that we do in each set of our curriculum. We have 3 different sets of curriculum. And through each set of curriculum, they keep meeting Janella. And we turn the tables on the girls immediately. And they become a financial advisor for Janella immediately. So we reverse the roles, which is kind of fun. So there's these 3 sets of curriculum that we do for the first 5 weeks, but only do 1 set for each cohort. After the 5 weeks, we then go on what's called a field trip. And the field trip is to the corporate sponsors' offices. And the reason we do that is because we want the girls to see women in authority. So again, we're overcoming this obstacle that they don't see women in finance. They don't see women in STEM. So the only people that they will meet on that field trip are women in authority. And so they'll meet women who do with math, who are very comfortable with math, and so forth. And so it's really, really eye-popping for the girls, because many of our students are first-generation American, first-generation college-bound who have never seen women in authority. And so I'll give you a perfect example. We were working with a school down in Dallas, Texas, and it was the children of migrant workers. And so we went to a corporate sponsor office. And so they had the foresight, knowing the demographic of the students, because their volunteers had been at the school working with our program. And so they met the students over the 5-week period. They, all day long, those girls who were the children of migrant workers met nothing but women who spoke Spanglish. So Spanish and English, and were women of authority. So it was really eye-popping for these girls. You should have seen their eyes alone and just, oh my gosh. And on top of that, the sponsor had the really, again, the foresight to ask the question, this one question: how many of you sitting in front of us today translate from English to Spanish for your parents? Everyone's hand went up. So they said, we want you.
Wow.
We want you because we need more translators for our clients down in all of Latin America. And so they were like, wow, somebody actually wants me too. So it was, just these really moving events that are created through our relationships with our corporate sponsors that may not happen otherwise if they didn't have a program like this. So in any event, that's the field trip. Then we have the girls sign up again with us if they want to join us for the mentoring component, which is in the spring. So in the spring, we'll have the girls who are really interested in business and finance and economics. And so those girls, roughly this year, we had about 70% of our students sign up, which we're very proud of. Usually it's about 50%. So we're doing something right. It's going up. And so during those sessions, we will work with the girls on their resume. We'll give them access to LinkedIn in terms of if they're 16 or older. We'll get them up on LinkedIn. We'll have them connect with me. I have over, so many 5,000 or 6,000 connections in the business that if they link with me, they can immediately get access to. We get them, we provide social capital to the girls. Again, thinking 69% of our girls are coming from minority families, 44% are coming from low-income households that never would have had this kind of exposure to these professionals before. So we create this social capital that they never would have had before, where we're creating job shadowing opportunities, summer internship opportunities, and so forth. So it's really very uplifting. And I am a big advocate for STEM professions, as you already know. I'm a perfect example of that. My father came from Ireland, and my mother as well. My father had about a 3rd grade education, and my mom about a 6th grade education. I'm the only one of my 5 siblings to graduate from college. And I do believe that STEM professions lift people out of poverty in one generation. And I'm a perfect example of that. And so I carry that within me, and I can preach that to the girls because you're looking at one.
That is so powerful. And what better than having a role model to see it's possible, because that immediately just knocks down that mental challenge or that the blockage that you have that, oh, I can't do this. Hey, look at this. She can do it. This is super amazing. And I have one last question for you. Why isn't financial literacy mandatory in the United States in high school, in your opinion?
That's an excellent question. I don't know the answers to why it's not required. I know that they're trying to do more about that. However, only 4% of families, low-income families, children of low-income families are required to take a financial literacy class. Only 4%. Okay, you will find in the higher socioeconomic schools that they are required, but in the lower economic, it's only 4%. We don't know the answer to that. That's a great question. My guess is it's going to be because, again, the math issue, that they just don't want to handle it. If you go into education, most of the teachers don't want to do finance. They don't want to, unless you go, of course, to a business school. It's completely different. But by then, you've lost the girls already. That's why you won't find them in finance classes, nor calculus, nor economics classes as much. You were usually 1 in 10 in the United States, by the way, at the college level. And we can go on about graduate school, but I won't. It's an afterthought. It's always an afterthought. It's always considered that the students will somehow learn that from their parents, which is not happening at all. In fact, the research shows that the parents would rather talk to their kids about sex and drugs than finances.
My goodness. Well, that has to do with pop culture. It's all about culture.
Yep.
It's all about culture. Oh, wow.
Yep. So we're turning that around a little bit because we do communicate with the parents. So as the student comes into our programs, we are emailing the parents too, because we have to get their permission, of course, because these are minors. So we have the access to them. And so we're saying, look, have a conversation around the dinner table about, what you make. You don't have to be specific, but in how you are saving and how you are budgeting. Go ahead and open that discussion now. You will be doing everyone a favor. One of the things I do want to stress, since you are reaching the moms, if I can mention this, and I hope, I don't know if you've seen this or you've heard this yet, but some of the women who have actually worked for me, they might be mid-30s, maybe late 30s, some of them. And here's what happens when a woman gets married and there's 2 incomes. Her money will go toward household expenses and the children's expenses. So it's gone, right, at the end of the day. His money gets put into the savings accounts, and he's managing all the money. And if, God forbid, there's a divorce, they don't even realize that it's all in his name. And she's spent all her money on household income, on household expenditures, and on the children's expenditures. And so the woman, I've had this discussion with a couple of them. They're like, I don't have any money anymore because I spent it on my children and the household. It's his money that's all in the retirement accounts. And so if you do anything with the women who you're that you are teaching, please make sure you ask that question, and please make sure that they don't do that in their marriage.
Oh my God, my jaw just dropped, because in our marriage is exactly the opposite. And I just thought this is how it is. I had no idea. Our marriage, my account, whatever I make, that goes through investment. All the household, everything in the household is my husband pays for it.
You are completely the opposite of most.
Oh my goodness. I had no idea, but thank you so much. I should totally go and ask this question for my students.
You should. Absolutely. You absolutely should. I've heard it a couple times from the women who are just like below me, as I said, 30 something, just with the kids, school age kids. And they're like, and they want to they're thinking about a divorce, but won't get divorced because of that. They don't have any money, and they don't know where it is. They don't know where it's located. They don't know how it's titled. Nothing.
Well, I mean, so in one sense, when people get into my program, I do teach them how to like get their husbands together, and they do the financial literacy steps together to get their financial plan and do it on their own. Because again, if you go to a financial advisor, you won't understand what's really going on. That's why I stress so much, and you have to do this yourself so that you know where everything is. I think I kind of got that part right, but I had no idea that, yeah, two income families. That, thank you so much for bringing that up. And thank you so much for everything you do. This is just super empowering. And I'm going to share this with literally you guys. If you're watching this, you have to, if you have a daughter, if you know people who have daughters, please forward this video to them, because you can see what a difference it can make in your daughter's life, in your friends' daughters, and your nieces, and lives in the future. It's night and day, because it's not just about, okay, a career in finance. A lot of times, just like actually surviving your marriage, it's like money and sex are two of the main reasons people get divorced. And people, if you don't know about your finances early on, you're going to suffer. And after listening to you, I now know crystal clear why I became interested in this. Yeah. Because, so you said that families don't talk about finances. So my family, my dad, he was a successful engineer before the revolution. After the Iranian Revolution, he lost everything. So we were kind of struggling because he had to, it's a very long story. They were going to kill my dad, and they were going to come to America. And then
I know those stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then my brother came, and then we had to send money from Iran to the US, exchanging the Iranian rial, which is worthless, to the US dollar, which was crazy. So that's how I became familiar with currency exchange, which is the reason why my first ever trade was in currencies. But we always had the money discussion. And it's interesting because, again, you said that in America, it's more common for moms and dads to have the sex and drugs conversation rather than money. We never had the sex conversation with my parents because that's taboo in Iran. Like even mentioning anything about it is just completely out of so you cannot talk about it. We had money talks often. So I think that may have had something to do with me being interested in this and thinking that I can help my parents. Maybe like that was kind of my mission along the way. I was like, I want to help my parents and things like that. So yeah, having the talk with your family. You guys, you've got to share this video with as many people as you can. Maura, you're doing an amazing thing. I hope you get more sponsors so that all the high schools in America can start taking Rock the Street, Wall Street. And I think it's just super important. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for what it is you're doing too. I really appreciate everything you're doing for the moms, because they need help too. So I'm thrilled that somebody's out there working on that end of it as well.
We're together. We're going to just rock everything finance.
Sounds great.
So we have one tradition that we do on the show. I ask all of my guests to make a silly face on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1. Oh, that